Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a dear friend of Nadine's and Moment. She received Moment's first Human Rights Award in 2019, and after her death, we named this award in her honor. It is my pleasure to announce that the 2023 recipient of this year's Ruth Bader Ginsburg Human Rights Award is Justice Dorit Beinisch. Appointed in September 2006 after the retirement of Aharon Barak, she was the first woman to serve as president of Israel's Supreme Court. As a justice, she ruled in numerous cases relating to human rights, minority rights, terrorism, and national security. In all her decisions, she stressed the importance of protecting the rights of women, children, and the most vulnerable members of society. Justice Beinisch was a friend and colleague of Justice Ginsburg. She had planned to be here, but given the terrible turn of events in Israel, felt she could not leave at this time. Nadine interviewed Justice Beinisch last week, and we're going to share a clip of that interview with you all now. The full interview will be available on our website later.
First of all, I'm thankful for the award, and I appreciate what you're doing. And I think that now we realize more than in the past how important it is to hear the Jewish voice, the Jewish journal, the Jewish people involved in everything, in our life, in political life, in society life, and you represent it with your Moment. So this is a moment of importance in Moment, I think so.
I know from talking to Justice Ginsburg that she was very concerned about the Israeli Supreme Court. And I know that that's not front and center right now, but I would love for you to explain to us why the court is so important in Israel, which, as you've mentioned, does not have a constitution.
That's the first reason. I mean, very important issue in Israel. She was very much concerned about it, really. She knew our judgments, she knew and she liked it, and she appreciated what we do. But the role of the Supreme Court in Israel is important more than in any other democratic country. I don't know how much you followed what happened here in the last year about the independence of the court, but this became an issue, a very important issue. We have not only not a written constitution, the power of the executive here is very strong. And the system of government is so that through a coalition, the regime is in the hands of the executive, who need a majority in our Knesset, in our parliament, so they can control legislation, they can control whatever the executive does. No judicial review, no other review, no constitutional limits. So the court represents really the limits of power, the power to review what a government does. I think this is so important, and one of the really most difficult years that Israel had before the war was the fight to keep the status and the supremacy of the Supreme Court and its power, because it's the only guarantee that we have for human rights, actually. Every legislation could be changed by the Knesset. With no review, they can do everything. Politicians, the rule of the majority, without anything to protect minorities, is a serious threat to the society, to a democratic society. And this was the issue in the last year that we fought so much to achieve. And while this happened now, no one knows what will be our future. I believe that we will overcome it with success. I believe so.
What's it like in Israel for everyone right now after the October 7th attack and during this war?
October 7th, our world changed completely. For us, this is something that we don't even understand how terrible, what a catastrophe it was. Catastrophe that happened by surprise, that changed everything. We're in the midst of a very, very difficult war. This was such a cruel attack, such a terrible attack. I have no words to describe it, and no one can describe what happened in Israel on the Saturday, the 7th of October. It's not the same thing. And now people are really, the atrocities are terrible. Families killed, so many victims. I'm not, of course, kidnapping of civilians, children, women, elderly people. It's something that we cannot even grasp and understand. How could it be? And this is a situation we didn't believe that we'll be in. So many wounded, so many victims, so many people hurt, and it's not over yet. It's not over. The war is going on in Gaza. We don't know how it will go.
You've been a champion of democracy, of Israel's democracy. And do you see or foresee that this war, the attack, the war, will strengthen Israel's democracy after the war, or during the war?
I believe so. I think that most of the people, realize now the price that we paid for not protecting the rule of democracy, our democracy, taking too much emphasis on issues that are not that important on expense of keeping our democracy. I think people realize it now. We paid a lot for that. I believe it will get up with a new situation where we understand the real importance of a democracy with a liberal society and with an independent court. I really think that this is one of the most important things after we achieve, of course, peace and really find solutions for the practical things that we have now to find, our economy, the situation of people, to build a country from the beginning in certain areas, which is really unbelievable, but this is what we have to do. And a better society then. This is my hope.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us today, even by Zoom. We're so grateful and we're so delighted to give you this award.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nadine. And all the best. And I hope you succeed in what you're doing now. And the gala will be a nice one and a good one. And remember us here in Israel. We are with you. You are with us.
Congressman Jamie Raskin received Moment's inaugural Ruth Bader Ginsburg Human Rights Award in 2021 and is with us tonight to present this year's award. Jamie?
Good evening. Hello, Moment. And congratulations to tonight's award winners who are both in the room and all over the world. Hello to Nadine Epstein, wherever you are, the fearless leader of Moment. Robert Siegel, it's a pleasure to be with you. Where are you tonight? There you go. I got to say, it's a great comfort just to hear your voice. I feel like I'm in my car whenever I hear you speak, Well, it's an honor to get to present this award to Justice Beinisch. I was the recipient of this award when it first started, and it was a great honor to receive it. I'm sure it's changed my life in many ways, and I certainly think about Justice Ginsburg ever since I got it. And she was a great champion of justice, both as a lawyer and when she was on the Supreme Court. And so in that sense, she embodies and personifies a lifelong commitment to justice. And the argument could be made that she did as much good as a lawyer as she was able to do as a justice because of the mathematics of the court when she got there. But even though she found herself in a minority, oftentimes she planted the seeds of future justice in a lot of powerful dissenting opinions. I'm thinking about the Lilly Ledbetter case, some of you guys might remember, where, you remember, Lilly Ledbetter had spent her entire career working at the Goodyear Corporation, and it was literally at her retirement party when she was being toasted and it was a happy occasion. And then some of the guys started joking about the fact that she was such a good sport, about the fact that she'd been making 10 to 15% less than all of the guys because she was a woman. And at first she thought they were joking, and they said, no, it really was the case. And she found out that indeed it was the case, that she had been underpaid for her entire career. And she brought an action under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 for sex discrimination. And the conservative majority, Scalia and Thomas and the gang, in their great wisdom, determined that she had to have brought her sex discrimination case within 180 days of the very first act of sex discrimination. Otherwise, the statute of limitations had run out. And Justice Ginsburg said, well, no, each time she got a discriminatory paycheck, it renewed the discrimination, and therefore she was within the statute of limitations, but she lost on that. But she basically defined the template which Congress and state legislatures across the country were able to follow in order to overturn that outrageous desecration of a decision. And so the real power of the equal pay laws now is due to Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the opinion she was able to write. And she wrote an equally blistering dissent in Shelby County versus Holder, which was the case where the court basically dismembered the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and again laid out a pathway for Congress to follow, which at least the House of Representatives did in the last Congress with the John Lewis Voting Rights Act of or amending the Voting Rights Act of 1965, but it didn't pass in the Senate, but we're still working on that. But, for Ginsburg, it wasn't, whether you win or lose now, but whether you're able to articulate the principles of justice and civil rights and civil liberties that will end up triumphing when the game turns in our direction. And I see a lot of that same spirit in the great jurisprudence of Justice Beinisch in Israel. She's been a tremendous champion of children's rights, of the rights of women, of equal pay and equal rights in that country, human rights of the whole population, and a commitment to the rule of law. And in these days of outrageous terrorist atrocities, as we saw on October 7th, and brutal war and division and polarization all over the world, we must hold fast to the principles of the rule of law here in America, the Constitution, and all of the international laws that govern the relations among countries. October 7th was filled with war crimes and crimes against humanity, and they give cause for a just war of self-defense on behalf of Israel and its people, who were so fundamentally assaulted and violated by those treacherous actions. And the war of self-defense both arises from international law, and it is also guided and constrained by international law and the Geneva Conventions, the 4 treaties and the 3 protocols under the Geneva Conventions. And that's the difficult line that Israel and the world must walk at this point as we aspire to reach some higher moral ground and legal ground at this terrible moment in our times. And I'll just say I'm glad that Justice Beinisch is where she is in Israel, and I'm glad that she continues to fight for the principles that animate her. I'm glad we had Justice Ginsburg, and I'm really glad that we've got Moment Magazine to help us navigate the twists and the turns of this agonizing moment in human history. So congratulations, Justice Beinisch, on receiving this award.
Justice Beinisch asked her good friend, Judge Ellen Heller, to accept the award on her behalf. Judge Heller is another trailblazer, A member of the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame, she was the first woman to hold the position of Administrative Circuit Court Judge in Maryland. She is also a former trustee and chair of the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Foundation and the former president and chair of the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, the largest Jewish humanitarian organization in the world.
Thank you very much on behalf of my dear friend, Justice Beinisch. Justice Beinisch, as you heard, was the first woman Chief Justice for the Israel Supreme Court. She was the first woman state attorney of Israel, the same as our Attorney General of the United States. She has so many distinctions, as you heard from herself and from her background. And she was an extraordinary, is warm and gracious person to all people. I can attest to that. When we first met many years ago, she was already on the Supreme Court, and my husband and I were on a trip to Israel, and someone had set up a meeting with the Chief Justice. I don't think she was chief then, but we walked into her chambers, not knowing, judges, like everybody else, have all different personalities. And this warm, gracious woman came to us and served us her homemade cookies while she poured her tea. Indeed, she then invited us to Friday night Shabbat dinner and cooked from soup to dessert the entire dinner. Justice Beinisch is also known for her impeccable integrity. You heard from her tonight her strong leadership for an independent judiciary, something we were all aware of before October 7th happened from the summer. She also has a superior knowledge of the law of terrorism and has served on panels in this country and elsewhere on the law of terrorism. And finally, I would say she's known on the bench and on the Supreme Court for her fairness to all Israelis. Having said that, I said to her, do you want me to say something upon receiving the award? She said, well, I was already interviewed, but you may say the following, very short. I'll read what she told me. I would love to be with all of you at this exciting event, but unfortunately, we in Israel are in the midst of a war against a cruel and brutal terror organization, so I cannot join you in person. Thank you for the award. We are all praying for the release of our innocent hostages, including children, elderly people, women and men. I believe that with the support of the Jewish and the civilized international community, we will build a better and just society for ourselves and for our next generation. Thank you on behalf of Justice Beinisch.